Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PIcc Collaborative Community aims to harmonize approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PIcc is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
Well, let's just get started. Good afternoon on this lovely Wednesday, everyone. This is the PIcc meeting for March 2024, and we can open it up for discussion in a bit, but let's go through some of the material and some of the news. So we start with the FDA. There is this artificial intelligence and medical products, a joint statement across several of the divisions of the FDA. I think this was considered an internal document, but it was made public to illustrate some of the areas of focus that are happening, across the different centers. And, we will share this, I believe, in the chat and or later on the website. Next is a real-world evidence document. It's a draft guidance document from March. This is for non-interventional studies for drug and biological products. So you might wonder, why are we showing this in a device-oriented session? Well, it is, of course, the case that real-world evidence is a big topic for us, especially given, some of our projects that we get to in a minute. So learning across the different use cases might be very helpful. Next, this is one section from this draft guidance that I just wanted to briefly point out. This is incomplete, so this is just a part, but I wanted to share this snippet because some of the things that I believe are probably going to be the same in other areas or domains is, for example, that for data sources, some of these definitions, for example, that, available information, data reliability, the description of common data models, or the availability of information, the timing of assessments for key data elements is probably going to be the same. So if you want to take a look at that, or if you're working with real-world evidence, that might be very helpful. The next element here is a notification about a labeling alteration. So that's also of general interest. And the highlighted section here shows the exact revisions and how that happened. You see, this is a initial approval from 1962, and this is a labeling update. So while this might apply to some of the people who work with DPD testing, etc., this is, a chemotherapy-related deficiency detection test, for example, and just wanted to share this as it is fairly important. one element that was updated last year, but several people had sent links to this because they thought it was very helpful, is that there is a tips page for commenting on CDRH guidance documents. So as you know, for example, this document that we just looked at, which says, download the draft guidance, it is, of course, a draft, so you can submit comments online. For example, here, in the, applicable timeline till June. And this document here, the link is in the chat, is how you should comment on this to make it most effective for our friends in the FDA. So that might be helpful to some of you. One update that happened also just a few days ago is that there was an update to the Breakthrough Devices program. There's a few clarification points mentioned here. And, it is just important to note that the program itself is intended to provide patients and healthcare provider with timely access to certain medical devices. And since the launch of the program, the FDA has granted 932 breakthrough device designation and authorized 95 breakthrough devices for marketing. This is an overview. You see this number is peaking. And two of the things that were changed, and I just point out one of them real quick here is, of course, the question, is my device eligible for this breakthrough designation pathway? And there's many, many different sections in the document. We won't have time to get into this. But if you look that this is now at least one of the following has to apply. Of course, the first one is basically, is my device eligible for breakthrough designation? Well, is it representing a breakthrough technology? And there's a long definition around that. If there's no approved or cleared alternative, or if there's other significant advantages over existing, or the device availability is in the best interest of patients. So any one of these would be sufficient. Quick pointer, because I know a lot of people were interested in discussing, whether some of the digital pathology and/or AI applications would fall into this. So I will provide this sort of first, second criterion overview as a pointer. And I think, thank you, Noor, for pasting this in the chat already. There's a couple of updates. We labeled this DC updates because it's not legislative. But I wanted to illustrate this because there were really a lot of questions related to the hearing, which we get to in a second, and the so-called rulemaking. So the issue about this, which I thought might be helpful for many of you, is how does this actually apply? What is, the discussion with Valid Act and the proposed rule by the FDA? And I point to this paper here by Richard Huang that basically illustrates sort of the relationship. So the Constitution, laws, titles, and then regulations are different layers of how law is implemented. So if you look at the layer of law, that is really the point that there's federal authority to regulate, or that law rests with the US Congress and delegated to the federal agency through law. So this would be, and we get to this in a second, the FDAC Act. Now, when it comes to the statutory basis for regulation, meaning in this case, let's say the FDA issuing regulation that might differ greatly in terms of its specificity. And of course, it is then to be determined, for example, in terms of the Valid Act or any other new bill, what will the regulations under that law be? Now, underneath that, there's guidances and other, tools or instruments to further clarify the law. So I wanted to show this briefly because the two things in terms of comparison of what's going on right now in the discussion with the proposed FDA ruler over LDTs is that the FD&C Act is the law that was enacted in 1938 that gave FDA the authority. And so in this case, the law empowered the FDA, and the FDA is now proposing a rule. That's the proposed rule, so to say. CLIA 88, with a few other modifications, has empowered CMS to oversee CLIA regulations. So I just wanted to outline this because that might be very helpful. I won't go through this table. We just provide this as sort of a reference to understand what, purpose, scope, and oversight activities are when it comes to FD&C versus CLIA, because that's often like said as if, the proposed rule is at the same level as CLIA, but it really is not. And I just thought of providing this as sort of an outline that valid versus the proposed rule are really on different layers of this, legislative movement, if you want to call it that. So what is rulemaking? Because that was a question that we received. The terms rule and regulation are often used interchangeably. Now, it's not 100% clear, but for this discussion, it's absolutely so. And the so-called Administrative Procedure Act, or APA, of 1946 sets forth the agency process for formulating, amending, or repealing a rule. So that falls basically within the scope of the agency. That is very important because valid act would be a law that would be a role of Congress, not of the agency. There were like several discussions in a long email chain, and I just wanted to put this on here as a resource for others to have. And if you're interested, we point to a fantastic work by King and Spalding that is a brief overview of the federal rulemaking process. Won't go into details, but it is probably important before engaging in a discussion around LDTs or LDT regulation to understand what the difference is between lawmaking and rulemaking. Just a quick pointer sort of as an educational resource. Another resource that I want to share, which is a paper currently in print by Leslie Smith from the group around Jonathan Gensen from ARUP and University of Utah, is that they took the hundreds, or I think it was thousands of submissions as or around the proposed LDT rule, mapped them geographically, and also by certain features. So for example, financial resources or negatively impacted by the rule, or basically the meta evaluation of all the submissions around the proposed rule. And I think that's a great resource. So again, pointer to this. Now, some of you may have seen this already. Chairs Rogers and Guthrie announced a health subcommittee hearing on 321. This happened and is available. It's a 2-hour, 52-minute video, so it's quite a long hearing, but it is portraying some of the issues from all levels and multiple stakeholders. Prepared a summary witness statement PowerPoint that quickly summarizes what's happening. And then for those who will not have time to look all of this, I just point to the 5 excellent stakeholders, all experts in their respective domain, representing different groups. And, in large oversimplification, this is the FDA rule support or not support plus minus list of the different witnesses. And then one question I think that was asked by Ms. Achu was, so what do you think about valid? And that's also like a little bit of a heterogeneous field here, but I just want to provide this. At the same time, or a few days before the hearing, Ranking Member Cassidy provided a release where they want to of course, emphasize that this is an important issue related to, laboratory diagnostic testing. And they ask for input related to modernizing these regulations. And when you look at the actual call for action, this is happening until April 3rd. So I ask you, if you're interested, to, of course, read through this and then provide input under diagnostics@healthsenate.gov. This is a call to action to provide input related to this issue around the proposed rule. Now, a call for action like this is typically done when a law, for example, a reiteration of the Valid Act, is considered. And so that might be a way to become active. And the interesting part, why I want to bring this up here, is that there are very detailed questions around these 2 different approaches. So an FDA regulatory framework and the CLIA regulatory framework. And these are specific questions that they seek input for. So I think Noor already pasted the link to the website. So if you feel that you can contribute something meaningful, take a look at these questions, and then you can probably attack them. Here's a relaxing red slide just to take a short break. Now, a few other updates that many of you will have heard already is ARPA-H has released several calls or proposals. There's a module announcement. So under ARPA-H, there's this advanced research project section. In this case, it's focused on cancer. And this was released in early March. And I wanted to provide just a quick overview for those who are interested in this. So the so-called ADAPT program is emphasizing three areas or technical areas of interest. This is a visual depiction, and you can read here how cancer patients might benefit from rapid, consistent, and accurately using the data around their treatment, clinical trials, and of course, therapy recommendations. Procedurally, these are the three areas of interest, and they're detailed here, so you can take a look at this. And the submission for proposal ends this Friday. So these are called performers if you want to submit something, and the solution summaries are due, I think, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, and you can get to this link. What was, I thought, very helpful in case you're interested in this is the evaluation criteria for stage 1. They're specifically listed, so I think that is very, very transparent, and that might be helpful. And then the second pointer also from ARPA-H is the Investor Catalyst Hub, which is a part of the ARPANET-H Health Innovation Network. There is also probably a link in the chat momentarily. The call is for April 1st from 1 to 2. And this is the so-called medical imaging data marketplace. And this will be a session that will illustrate how this MDIM, what they call it, is the first joint effort between ARPA-H and the FDA. And I believe the Aldo Baldano, you see this here from CDRH, will join Ileana Hanku. So this is definitely going to be imaging, FDA, meaning regulatory impact, and funding opportunity and or ARPA-H initiative. So quick pointer related to this. Same and also related to our initiative here is an update from our different projects. So first off, if you have not seen the email yet, please take a moment and fill out the PIcc regulatory landscape survey. It's a very brief survey, around 10 questions about digital pathology and AI, to understand what statement and questions could be addressed using regulatory science questions. Please share this also with your other colleagues and stakeholders that you believe can provide meaningful impact or input for this, as this will go on the website, on our PIcc website, probably relatively soon. And we hope that by sharing that, of course, on the website to everyone, but also in particular with our colleagues in the FDA, that they will have a good idea what sort of the burning questions around digital pathology are and what the field thinks. So please take a few minutes and fill this out if you have some time. A quick update over the so-called PIcc FNIH project. This is the foundation of the NIH. For those who don't know, we presented in November 14 as a sort of like initial project of multiple stakeholders coming together. We had many follow-up calls and multiple, let's say, drafting sessions that ultimately led to a first proposal. You see here, these are two screenshots from the first and the last page. There's a lot of track changes going on. As you can see, we're in the middle of the drafting phase. If you want to join, please let us know. Maybe shoot Noor a message and or Brandon here in the chat. They can probably quickly give you access to this document so you can take a look what we're proposing. And in large oversimplification, this here is a quick drafting. So we again drafting this for what's called currently building a regulatory ready real world data set, a collaborative approach for validating AI models in breast cancer diagnosis. And this is leveraging large parts of what Brandon and the HTT project have already done. So the first part is, of course, that designing what we're going to do. The collection phase would be doing how we said we're going to do it. And then the utilization would be that you can actually use this regulatory ready data set. This is the large vision. of course, we have to start somewhere, so that would be the pilot, and you can see here what the outline is. I see Brandon joined. Brandon, do you want to make any comments or add on something?
Yeah, no, I think this is nice figure you put together to add to our pitch deck. I am excited to start shopping this to the Foundation for NIH members because really in the end they're going to be the ones that fund this initiative, and so we need to find out whether this resonates with their ideas, and that's kind of why we have it in a phased approach. The phase one will be kind of a low budget but really exploratory phase to see if we can all be on the same page, and also to submit something. That last bullet there, submission of the MDDT proposal to the FDA, to get the FDA reviewer feedback on our proposal, so that that will also be information to share with the Foundation for NIH members to decide whether to continue with phase two. You know, did things sound right to the FDA reviewers like they sounded right to the ones submitting the proposal?
Thank you.
Lots of proposal pieces. Some of them
Yes.
are for getting the funding, and the other is about whether the data collection plan is good.
Yeah, correct. And I think it's coming along nicely. I think we still need to edit a little, and then we can hopefully submit fairly soon. Quickly handing it over to Noor, if you have a moment, and I can move the slides.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing good. Apologize, I'm getting over strep, so if I sound a little sick, that's why. I've pasted into the chat 2 links for the upcoming MDIC conferences. They are less than a month away, and we're very excited to have everyone at the College Park Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. The first event is the MXR event, which is a Medical Extended Reality Conference. And the second one will be the FDA co-sponsored MDIC Symposium on Computational Modeling and Simulation. Tickets are live for both events, and we are very excited to have some familiar names joining us for both events. And just like I've previously said in previous meetings, both events are interchangeable. So if you're interested in some sessions in either or event, you're allowed to swap the agendas based on whatever you would prefer to attend. So we're very excited, and we hope to see many of you all there.
Thank you. I added a quick plug to a conference that's happening tomorrow, the so-called Molecular Tricon conference in the Hilton Hotel in San Diego. You see here is a session that Jitesh and MDIC put together, which is, advancing the AI in diagnostics and healthcare, a role of the public-private partnership model. And we have a panel discussion. I will join for PIcc and join Keith Wharton and Mary Ellen Mars, the program director from MDIC. So it should be a very interesting discussion. Quickly jumping over to some updates from Europe. One element is that in Germany, the Health Data Utilization Act has been passed, which is a very, very interesting and research-driven data utilization law that is now enacted and is priming something that many of us will then experience hopefully soon. And that's leading us to the second part that was almost identical earlier this month. This came out, and this is the proposal for the regulation of the so-called European health data space. That is the abstract room or space where all of Europe is trying to consider how and what to share for more data mobility, etc. A very, very complicated document, but it has been passed on March 18th, and it might change actually the way how many of us will interact with Europe when it comes to health data. OECD, I believe, has, sorry, this comes from the European Research Council. OECD comes in a minute. The European Research Council put together this so-called foresight paper, which includes the results of a large survey. And there's many uses and impact analyses in there. This is from 2023, but it is sort of a roadmap of how the European Research Council, through their various funding mechanisms, aims to incentivize certain things. And you can see here implementation of ethical guidelines, for example, had a very high likelihood of being available. And there were also many pointers to how AI should be regulated, etc. Quickly, many of the societies, we just mentioned already a few events of our convener, MDIC, and I just wanted to point out to some of our partnering societies, they have shared when and what meetings there are. So I presume you know about all of these, so I won't put a lot of time on it, but I just wanted to mention that we, of course, extremely impressed by everyone putting up so much effort and great meetings on the digital pathology frontier coming up later this year. A quick pointer to an interesting circulating tumor DNA paper. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in March 14. And when you read here the bottom quick summary, that a blood-based test with an 83% sensitivity for colorectal cancer, 90% specificity for advanced neoplasia, and 13% sensitivity for advanced precancerous lesions. This is probably indicating that this type of testing will soon become probably much more frequently used than currently, and it illustrates that some of these technological advances will hopefully soon reach the clinic. In the DEI section, there's a lot of papers that you have submitted. I thank you very much for this. One is a so-called self-care interventions and a well-being paper. And the interesting part in this, I would say that this applies to all of us, is these so-called the system building blocks that the WHO considers a new health system of identifying key areas and then identifying goals. I thought that this was a very interesting compilation of components that are important, and you can probably apply this also not only to self-care, but for example, to any other innovation that you want to accomplish. Similar, there is a Woman, Power, and Cancer from this group here, a large collaboration that identified, a framework to how to engage and incentivize certain diversity, for example, when it comes to this balance for women in certain roles of decision making. So quick pointer here. There's also a very interesting paper here on the demographic bias of expert level vision language foundation model. I kindly ask you to read the sentence here real quick. And you will see that, the sentence deploying AI systems with these biases in medical images can intensify pre-existing care disparities. Probably well in line with what the FDA is trying to do with submissions to identify and respect and or proportionally represent minorities. This paper here, also very interesting, published in PNAS, is an analysis over what scientists appear on editorial boards, etc. And if you look at this quickly highlighted section down here, that the citation rates of US-based papers, we find that Black and Hispanic scientists receive significantly fewer citations compared to white ones doing similar research. You can take a look at the statistics. It's a very interesting approach how this was conducted. Finally, there was a manifesto published related to breast cancer coming, or it came out in joint cooperation of many, many different authors at the EBCC 14th conference, or the 14th European Breast Cancer Conference, which just concluded in March. And some of these statements from the manifesto, if you look at this, for example, the second bullet point, real world and registry data, is, I think, very well aligned with what we're trying to do. So I've reached out to two of the people to see what and how they are willing or able to implement this manifesto, or if it was intended mostly as a statement to show sort of alliance to help breast cancer patients. But I believe, at least we can reference this in our proposal to FNIH. But I think the approach is very well aligned with what this group, and it's a large consortium of multinational teams, came up with. I wanted to just quickly point to this. I don't know if I see anyone from Friends on the call. Friends of Cancer Research, of course, our designated patient advocacy group with a strong interest in regulatory science, has this beautiful scientific report published recently. We can share it, of course. You see some of the accomplishments by number. If you see, there's a lot of downloads, many white papers and position statements, and it is extremely great that one project now that Friends of Cancer Research is doing is called the Digital Pathology Project. You see here roughly what the initial idea is behind it, and the focus areas are two, and you see the concept quickly outlined. I presume at some point we will have a joint session, and we'll ask Friends as the project progresses to hopefully provide some updates, but it will be definitely of interest with many different participants. A quick overview of some of the resources, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago. OECD has also published, similar to the European Research Commission, a very interesting explanatory memorandum. You see here some of the authors, and this is really a large group that came together and tried to update the definition of an AI system. And it is very important to consider this just for a moment. And I want to just show you a few elements here. So the text above is what has been previously defined, and the updated definition reads as follows. And then as a resource, I provide here for comparison the official FDA definitions for AI and ML. And you can compare these because they're not they're same, but different, of course. But it might be helpful to read this or keep it as a resource. The other part that is fantastic in this memorandum from OECD is the figure 1, where they distinguish the build phase of a so-called pre-deployed AI system or algorithm versus the post-deployment phase. And the interesting thing is, which is different from the predetermined change control plan by the FDA, you see here the output and the influence of the environment here is one of the key distinguishing factors. And it is explained in all detail in this explanatory memorandum that defines AI and gives some simplified explanations or visuals. So definitely a fantastic resource. One other book, I should call it, it's a large document, not quite through in terms of reading, but I definitely recommend looking at this, also from OECD, and this is a so-called Health System Performance Assessment Framework on how you can, as a health system, use your resources and provide tangible measures or key performance indicators. And this is really interesting if you plan larger scale projects. And of course, we're still wondering how we can ensure financial sustainability of digital pathology, and this might give you a good hint in that. Another resource, a phenomenal paper by Professor Nguyen from the University of Utah. He's a professor for philosophy, wrote a paper called The Limits of Data, and presents as a proposal the first and second principles of data, and illustrates also that when you collect data, then you lose certain things, for example, the context, which I believe in our data collection efforts should definitely be reflected. And it is a fantastic paper published in Issues in Science and Technology. Another resource that we received was from the Association for Molecular Pathology. And this is an overview, they call it Molecular in My Pocket, of interpretation databases, which I think is a phenomenal resource. So this is a resource about resources, but definitely wanted to share this with you. Another paper also published in Issues in Science and Technology comes from Dr. Liu and Von Willen, redefining the role of the technologist. So this is a very, very 10,000-foot view about what is a technologist and how can we create opportunities. And the largely oversimplified abstraction of what they present in the text and very good examples is shown here with in terms of high priority skills and how the digital revolution and manual labor is coming together. And they call it the hub and spoke model for training technologists. So definitely of interest. One phenomenal resource that I think is very helpful for regulatory science comes from the Waseda University, and it's the IMERS. And they present an interdisciplinary academic framework for medical regulatory science. It looks fairly similar to what we published a few years ago in terms of our initial PIcc paper. And here it is basically multiple layers, including university, academic, medical research centers, etc., and the government, how you can work together. Definitely a good a resource for education. And I quickly jump over to the publications. And as you know, AI is really the burning topic right now. And there are many, many interesting papers. I've just selected a few. All will be on the website. This is a systematic pan-cancer study on deep learning. You see here from pathology images. And I just want to quickly point out that if you look over the mean areas under the curve, these are not, I think we have reached the layer of applicability, but at the same time also realistic expectations. So previously it was always that you had to have an AUC of 60 or no one would have believed you that is useful. But if you look at what is being predicted, that's actually quite impressive. So from images, for example, present of single nucleotide variants. And please also look at the N numbers here. That's very impressive. One quick pointer to the European Radiology Journal, a very interesting approach where this is chest radiographs. I'm showing this not for the content, but for the design, where the double reading system is introduced, which is conventional reporting, and then double reading with and without artificial intelligence to then demonstrate how much better or what elements were found and identified. And they had a very interesting re-review of those cases with discrepant findings. So definitely worth noting from a design perspective. This is an AI study on binary classification of soft tissue tumors. So again, I'm pointing to the AUCs and the sensitivities and specificities in this case for classifying benign and malignant soft tissue tumors. A great paper published in the Journal of Pathology Informatics. This paper here, I think Journal of Molecular Diagnostics, shows that NGS testing rates remained relatively low across tumors. But if you take a look, a very good emphasis on the disparities across the different tested populations. This is more or less a position paper to say, like, what can you do to address clinical practice gaps affecting personalized medicine in cancer care. And let me just quickly go over this is a phenomenal mechanistic paper on how epigenetic regulation in the cell is established. And I believe that this is one review on genetics that will hopefully soon or appear in textbooks, because it reached a level that is mechanistically so clear that it is probably finding its way into the textbook type of literature. One phenomenal study covering over 84,000 patients is here a meta-analysis published in The Oncologist, looking at the clinical value of timely targeted therapy for, in this case, lung cancer patients. You see what they distinguish between so-called switchers and non-switchers based on the results of an NGS test. And you see here the time to next therapy or the overall survival is definitely different. So making an argument that timely testing is important. And similarly, there was this position statement or a very interesting overview of a DNA and RNA sequencing to deliver, prompt care by Michael Eisenstein. Beautiful work and fantastic summary. Quickly, this is a predictor of based on real-world patient data on responses and side effects of immune checkpoint inhibitors. You see here again, take a look at the AUCs and some of the side effects. So this is basically a predictor working from the medical record, and there was a 2-year model input period versus testing period, and definitely great design and also great visuals in this paper. This is a statement by many experts in the field of radiology, including some of my former colleagues here from MGH. This is they call it lucent and opaque challenge of regulating AI in radiology. And you see here is a summary of some of the key elements that are currently regulated and how they're regulated. It's a fantastic summary published in NPJ Digital Medicine. Another great summary paper here about the new AI regulation. As you know, we presented the AI Act a little bit earlier, I think 2 months ago. So this is a paper by Dr. PIcc around the topic. For those who are interested in payer or payment strategies, this is a large multi-author paper, first authored by Dr. Khanna, about economics of AI in healthcare, diagnosis versus treatment, and whether or not one versus the other should have or can have different economic incentives around it. It's definitely interesting to take a look. In this paper here, this is an IEEE paper. It is smart healthcare. And if you look at this, many of these elements here, for example, wearable devices, smartphones, etc., are definitely providing input into a so-called general pipeline of a health monitoring system. So as we focus relatively uniquely on, for example, digital pathology, of course, these data will live in a digital ecosystem, and I thought that this was a great paper. So thank you for sharing this with the group. In this case here, again, from the radiology group, but if you look at these elements here that are quickly highlighted, in this case, it is the heterogeneity of predictors, and that AI errors strongly influence treatment outcomes with inaccurate AI prediction adversely affecting radiologists' performance on the aggregate of all pathologies and on half of the individual pathologies investigated. So clearly emphasizing the importance of good implementation or high quality implementation. This is a phenomenal multi-page tour de force over an immunophenotype coupled transcriptomic atlas of human hematopoietic progenitors. Really phenomenal. If you're interested in that field, definitely take a look. This paper is also groundbreaking as it illustrates in the extremely aggressive so-called small cell lung cancer, which is, of course, highly aggressive. And here this multi-consortium group has identified, several molecular subtypes. And if you look at this, that this group basically claims in this paper, they have uncovered key processes of the genomic evolution of small cell lung cancer under therapy. And they identified that a common ancestor as a source of clonal diversity at relapse. And that is an incredible finding. And, if you just know how much work these figures are, you can probably imagine how many hours got into this, but it's really an aggressive tumor and an incredible breakthrough by this group. In this case here, the list of authors was too long to put here. Tertiary lymphoid structures and B cells determine clinically relevant T cell phenotypes in ovarian cancer. Please take a look, and if you read at this last part, this is of course immune checkpoint inhibitor responsiveness and irresponsiveness as one element to harness this, and it's again also a very aggressive tumor type with phenomenal findings here. I won't go through these. I think we definitely I wanted to point at these papers, great figures here in terms of like being non-wasteful with tissue for genomic testing. And two more papers here. This came out a few days ago where digital and CompPath are portrayed as physician extenders, basically as useful tools that will help us. Now, I definitely wanted to leave some time for questions, but before that, I want to quickly point to our next steering meeting, and that's April 24th. And, I'll go back to this cover slide here real quick. So we have that. I'm going to stop sharing, and I wanted to open it up for discussion points, questions, etc. Lots of papers, lots of interesting new tools, etc. Any comments, questions, solutions? Now that I put this up in case.
I will be back. I think it's back.
Baliva, this regulatory survey, yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Joe, maybe you could go more into the ARPA-H thing with the medical imaging data marketplace. What exactly are they looking to do with this one?
This one here,
Yeah.
I think maybe Brandon, you provided this. Maybe you know more. I think this is I can show you here the text what they're trying to do. They say exploring the development of medical imaging data marketplace to expedite innovation in SAMD. But I do not know other details. Brandon, do you?
You want me to share? I have a slide that I presented earlier this week at the USCAP meeting. If you want to, I'll
Sure.
share it here as well.
Sure.
And this was shared. You see my screen with a slide
Yep.
on it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, ARPA-H and FDA is specifically the group I'm in. My division director, Aldo Badano, has been involved with communicating with ARPA-H to think about an initiative that we think would really support the innovation of artificial intelligence devices. And this is kind of the model. First of all, the one sentence kind of description of the take-home message is to create a self-sustaining marketplace. So that means marketplace, i.e. needs money going back and forth to be self-sustaining. DARPA-H said pretty explicitly that they won't be funding this forever, maybe 3 or 5 years. They don't know what that will be, but that's what the self-sustaining part is that there will be data providers on one side, all flavors, whatever group or organization might want to create an opportunity with their data are invited to be data providers, so that data users on the other side can use the data to do validation. If there's enough data, maybe even to train models. The whole point in trying to create this marketplace is to get larger data sets that would be diverse in patients and healthcare provider sites, to really do justice to validation or testing of AI devices. The federated part is supposed to mean that the data will stay on site at the data providers, and the models will travel. And then the market, the third piece is this piece right here about the FDA as being found right in the center of this. So me, my colleagues here will have a role I'm pretty excited about, whether it's just access to the data so we can understand variability in the disease and the distribution of patients, biomarkers, things like that, but also to give advice so that the data providers can create data that would be regulatory ready, so that that kind of data could go right into a submission after a performance assessment. And that's another thing that we'll be involved in, is likely creating scripts or tools that would support the performance assessment, you know, whether it's creating tables or creating performance figures. That way we can get more standardized presentation of performance reports and be able to review this material faster. So we're in the middle. There will also be the performers that the ARPA-H likes to call the awardees performers, who will be more focused on the operations and logistics of the marketplace. But the most important thing is right now they're collecting feedback on challenges to create that they will encounter in creating a marketplace. You know, it's not a done deal, that they haven't put the call for proposals yet, but the feedback will help them shape that if they intend to go forward.
Okay. Yeah, I think I mean, this sounds pretty cool. I mean, I think we've heard similar ideas from I think, is it RSNA that does something kind of almost similar with their own models in a way. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
one of
right.
the challenges, I guess I'll have to fill in the survey, because I was going to ask about a challenge, but if they're collecting challenges, I won't ask too much. But I'm just curious if there's any thoughts to um, how do you how would you ask participating data providers to standardize either the image formats or the metadata formats that get accompanied with these data sets that will be utilized. I'm just curious what would be expected to be a participant.
Well, listening to they have held one information session already, and they're going to hold another one. That's what Joe advertised in his slide deck. So make sure you get a chance to ask ARPA-H directly. But there's going to have to be some flexibility, but hopefully, ultimately, it continues to move us into standardized approaches. And certainly for each workflow or use case, I'm imagining that there would be some good standardization happening under the reference standard piece, and what covariates to collect for the patients, and those sorts of standards. Whether the image formats are forced to be all standardized, you know, that's left to the future. But certainly they want to be as aggressive and open to all sources and providers. But then if it's not useful because it's not standardized, then that's not going to accomplish it either. So there's going to have to be some good give and take and discussions to make that happen.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
It's Amy. It's me, Joe. So I put some stuff in the chat for those that are participating today, just to bring folks kind of aware, because I actually didn't know this. And so for those folks that are actually in California, probably been dealing with this, but I had no idea that California did not recognize, there you go, didn't recognize I get it wrong. It shouldn't be called the waiver. Everybody refers to it, but the enforcement discretion for remote sign out. And, as folks recall, back during the pandemic, there was a lot of work, particularly by me, Joe and Joe, in terms of trying to encourage enforcement discretion. And thankfully it did happen, and we did a lot of work to try to continue it. But, in terms of California, I didn't realize that they didn't really do it. In that sense, there were actually institutions like Stanford, UCSF that were doing remote sign up, but I guess technically illegally. So I put the letters officially there. I managed to encourage API, even though I'm not on the governing council, managed to sort of go there and rope in folks to write a letter in support of it, as well as ASCP, brought some friends from ASCP, and thankfully also DPA as well. And these letters were submitted, I forgot, to the website. There's a website somewhere that we have to support it to. And there's going to be a hearing on April 2nd. And I think one of our friends, Sultan Lazik, who's the director of DigiPath at UCSF, is going to be testifying to basically codify legislation to recognize the enforcement discretion. And I thought this was important because I know there's ramifications to actually having this enforcement discretion taking place. But if you leave a pocket like California open where they don't recognize it, it sort of leaves the door open so that there's the possibility of things rolling back. And I didn't necessarily want that to happen. I think we could progress forward, even though there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of just revising CLIA, being able to sort of accredit when you have remote sign out. All these different things are really work that needs to be done. But I didn't want to necessarily see a rollback in terms of things. And by leaving it open with California, I thought it was very important that we provide as much support as we can. And I have to admit, it was a little bit like pulling teeth. Unlike during the pandemic, maybe people were asleep, but it took a lot to try to get API to kind of go in, a lot more work than I actually thought. And then, but thankfully, I think ASCP as well as DPA has recognized it and have supported. And Kevin, not to put you in the spot, but I don't know if CFP was going to write a letter too before April 2nd. And anybody can, actually. Anybody could do it as an individual. I know there's chairs of departments in California that have written the letter as well. I know David Frischberg at Cedars. I think Stanford's working on one, and a couple UC Davis maybe as well. So it's one of those things where it's a true grassroots effort. It reminds me a lot of our work during the pandemic to actually get the the enforcement discretion to take place. But I just bring this to people's attention because it's still an issue. We have to keep it alive, in my opinion. We still should keep it alive, and we shouldn't be asleep because the tendency is to roll back things like this. I thought it was an important thing. So I'm providing these letters. You can copy them. I think ASCPs was actually more comprehensive. I think in APIs, I think we mentioned digital slides, and to be honest, we should probably make it for digital molecular data and other things. And I think ASCP is sort of broadened the language to make sure that everything is sort of inclusive on that. So I thought that was an important thing. I didn't have time to revise it because I wrote the letter and forgot about it. That was my bad. And but that said, I think people could follow the ASCP example as well and just copy paste it and just spam them to death. And so hopefully all these letters of evidence will sort of bring to light that maybe they should codify this legislation in California. So anyway, I'll leave it up for any questions for anybody on this one, but I thought it was a very important thing to bring up and very timely.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe, also for sharing the letters, so others can probably use some of the language in there, right? And I updated the slide deck, so it hopefully will be on the website soon. Noor, I put that in our Dropbox. Other comments?
Quiet group. A lot has happened.
Well, it's
relatively
definitely
quiet.
a lot going on. Everyone is just writing papers,
I guess
No.
if you don't mind, I'm actually excited to admit that now I can say there's two recent AI devices cleared by the agency for digital pathology. The second one actually is cytology. Hologic has a new device for cytology pap smear scoring. So the groups that are putting the effort into collecting the data that FDA wants to see to clear a device, we got two now, so it's not impossible, and it's even two, both of them are in two different technologies. So the one by Hologic, has Z stacking in it, So that's a new wrinkle to the whole enterprise. And I was happy to sit through that presentation at the US CAP meeting yesterday as my lunchtime break from standing.
Do you know if the whole logic, the indication for it is basically if it's a negative smear, it's cleared, or is it for, is this, you know, on a lot of these passages, my understanding, not being a cytopathologist, that it's high grade, that they really try to not miss. And then the ascuses and the other diagnosis there, maybe it's, I wouldn't say it's less important, but it's just one of those things that maybe for FDA clearance, it's just the negative ones where you can, you know, that's where you have certain reassurance. It's like the page one, where it's either benign or malignant. Now, the Gleason scoring part of the page is not FDA cleared, but
I think it has the scoring outputs are multi-level. ASCUS, you know, HSIL, LSIL, multi-level. So I don't think it's a binary, you know, kind of triage out all the normals. That's what they presented yesterday, and that's what I remember. Certainly, the decision summary will have that information, and I don't know whether it's already there as the in the de novo database, but I'll try and grab that up and share it with Joe to include it in the slide deck for today.
That's big. If it has all those multiple outputs, it's even more useful.
Yes, it has kind of a gallery is how they described it of different types of cells, and so I think it is a little bit more harmonious with the current workflow than maybe what you're imagining, which not be as dynamic.
Yeah, no, it's better. You know, is it also as a decision support, or can you actually run it autonomous? You know, I assume nothing's really autonomous, but you know, is it that good?
I think it's for the cytotech to receive that information. They can also pan and zoom the entire digital image, which is built from Z stacking. So at different locations, it has optimized the focal point for that particular target that's in that location. So it's a lot of kind of getting everything to be a flat image, even though the targets themselves are at different Z depths.
Yeah. So it picks the best one, basically. That technology's been out there, but I'm glad they've done that, or at least they've operationalized it.
Okay. Want to be mindful of the time. Thank you, everyone, and hope to see you in April or earlier. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thanks.